folks, I'm going to do the best I can to project my voice since we're having some technical difficulties. We're going to go ahead and open up the public hearing. We have two potential zoning amendments that are going to be considered at this public hearing, and the board is looking for public comment. First, I'd like to note for the record that this public hearing was advertised in accordance with the municipality's planning code. The ordinance number 461 is the... That sounded real. Okay, all right. Ordinance 461 is an ordinance of the Township of West Deer, County of Allegheny, Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, amending Chapter 210 zoning of the Code of Ordinances of the Township of West Deer to revise the definition of recreation facility. At this point, we'll open the floor to public comments on the ordinance. I would just note, as some background real quick, you probably, folks who attend the meetings regularly will recall that this amendment was driven at least in part by a need to, or a desire by the board to assure that short-term events such as the Corby Wood Fest in particular would not be required to jump through additional hoops, particularly where it's a charitable type event. So with that said, we're just going to go ahead and hear from any members of the public who would like to speak on ordinance number 461 only at this time, and that's the recreation facility definition.
Chapter 37 Corporate Line. Just a very short comment. The Planning Commission did recommend some changes to the wording, and I would advocate that you look at those changes and consider them because there was a lot of discussion about not being clear how to interpret the current wording. So I just want to mention that.
Anyone else? Okay, we'll go ahead and close that portion of the public hearing. We're going to go ahead now and move to ordinance number 462. This is an ordinance of the Township of West Deer, Allegheny County, Pennsylvania, amending the West Deer Township zoning ordinance as codified in Part 2, Chapter 210, Article 4, definitions, Section 210-7, meaning of words of the West Deer Township Code of Ordinances to include solar energy-related definitions, amending the use table in Part 2, Chapter 210, Article 5, zoning districts, Section 210-12, authorized land uses by district to include accessory solar energy systems as permitted accessory uses in all zoning districts in the township, to include solar energy facilities and battery energy storage systems as conditional uses in the rural estate zoning district in the township, amending Part 2, Chapter 210, Article 21, supplemental regulations to add new Section 210-140 to include supplemental regulations for accessory solar energy systems as permitted accessory uses in all zoning districts in the township, and solar energy facilities and battery energy storage systems as conditional uses in the rural estate zoning district in the township. Before we open up this ordinance for public comment, I want to provide a little bit of additional background. I think, frankly, I did a poor job explaining when we initially presented this ordinance for the board to expedite, let's say, to get some regulations on the books. So I'm going to wind that back a little bit because I know Mr. Shook was asked some questions and the Planning Commission was asked some questions at a recent meeting, and I want to try to provide a little bit of clarity for the public before you start making any public comments. So the way the ordinance currently sits in the township, the zoning ordinance in particular, there are no regulations related to solar energy facilities. It's accessory, or which is more your your individual residential uses, or the larger solar farm use. And if someone had walked in with an application today before this ordinance would have been passed, the zoning officer would have reviewed it with myself, the engineer, and we would have determined that is a use, a non-residential use that is not listed in the zoning code. And the way that we treat non-residential uses that are not listed in the zoning code is to allow them as conditional uses in the I industrial district. And the reason we have that provision in there is to try to prevent an argument that the township is exclusionary in any way. Because as most folks are aware, all lawful uses need to be provided for in every municipality, barring some multi-municipal situations that we don't need to get into. So that's the way it would have been handled. Now, and I think some folks would say, well, then aren't we covered? Is there really a need to do anything right now? And I'm going to tell you, for two reasons, I'm recommending that the board does take action. First off, the conditional use process, it requires the review by the board after a public hearing of the criteria related to a particular use. So most conditional uses have prescribed explicit specific criteria for each particular use, and the applicant is required to meet all those regulations and those criteria. Because there are no regulations or criteria for solar energy facilities, the board would have very limited ability to control a proposed solar farm use, even if it was limited to the I district. So, for example, some of the regulations, and I think some of the critical regulations that we proposed in the zoning ordinance, include a decommissioning bond, which is a bond that's going to be required to be posted by any solar energy facility, again, larger solar farm type operations, to ensure that if the operation goes belly up, if there's some other issue that essentially cancels that project, that the township and the taxpayers of the West here are not going to be left cleaning up 100 acres of worthless solar panels. Another important provision that we're proposing to add is paid training for all of the fire and emergency service personnel of the township to ensure that if there is any sort of disaster, fire, whatever it might be at the property, that our first responders are trained on the dime of the developer and have sufficient equipment and training to put out to deal with any disaster problems. The ordinance requires a viewshed study to ensure that this use is buffered and screened from nearby properties. It requires a sound study to ensure that there's not going to be impactful sound that's going to be caused by the use. So those sorts of things we most likely would not be able to add just as conditions of approval if someone would just come in without regulations with this in the I district. We would have very limited ability to control that. Another potential problem with leaving it as is there's not a lot of viable properties in the I district. And so a solar developer could make the argument that, hey, you put all unlisted uses in this zoning district, but my project would not be viable in the I district. And because of that, they could bring an exclusionary zoning challenge. And I think this is where some of the misunderstanding occurred, because Mr. Shook, I think, had said something along the lines of, hey, we're trying to ensure that this doesn't go in a place where you really wouldn't want it, such as an R2 or an R3 district. And if someone would make that exclusionary zoning challenge and would be successful, then they could request site-specific relief to put a solar farm anywhere in the township. So that's the two primary reasons, and I know the first reason was multifaceted, but the two primary reasons of wanting to get out in front and control this particular use, at least for the short term, until we develop additional or amended regulations. That's why that recommendation was made. So I think that's critical, and then the reason why in workshopping at the staff level, it was some consultation with the board, we chose the R district, at least as a temporary place, zoning district for this use to be, is that number one, it's 20 to 25% of the township, so very unlikely that someone could say it was exclusionary. Secondly, it contains a number of large enough parcels that could be viable for a solar farm facility. So again, it's never an ideal way to get a zoning ordinance done this way where you don't follow the normal process of, hey, planning commission, we'd like you to look at this, chill on this for a few months, make some recommendations, get some board input, make some revisions back to the planning commission. That's the way we always like to do it if we have the time. But the concern is, and I raised this very clearly when I asked the board to authorize advertisement of this public hearing, is that we are very aware of some very large-scale solar developers who are interested in not only Western Township, but some surrounding townships. And so we're having that conversation in other townships nearby as well. So I'll stop there. So that's the rationale. Again, I apologize to Mr. Shokan and the Planning Commission for not giving enough ammunition to answer some of the questions that I know were asked at that particular meeting. So with that said, though, it's your time to provide your comments to the board, but I wanted to give you that backdrop. So whoever would like to speak on the solar energy facility zoning ordinance, please come on up, state your name, and give us your comments.
Victoria Austin, Hemlock Street. West Deer does need a solar farm ordinance, but rushing one through, especially knowing it has numerous flaws and shortcomings, does not serve the public or our township and erodes faith in our local government and processes. The Planning Commission once again was neglected by quickly scheduling this hearing without giving them the opportunity to review and submit their suggestions. This is not the first time the Planning Commission has been bypassed. Why is their role repeatedly circumvented and minimized? Why is there such indifference shown to this skilled group of dedicated volunteers? If the proposed ordinance is vetoed, we can collaborate to improve and refine it with input and knowledge from our Planning Commission, township officials, supervisors, and from the taxpayers. During the process of modifying the proposed ordinance, the township and residents would be protected because a solar farm is an undefined use, thus only eligible for placement in I or industrial zones, and then only as a conditional use, requiring notification of residents and approval by the township. We would be protected if the ordinance in its current form is rejected or denied in order to thoughtfully address its deficiencies. Compare these interim regulations restricting solar farms to one single zoning district type during the amendment process to the lack of protection that now exists for gas and oil infrastructure, which includes massive dehydrators and condensate tanks of 3,000 gallons or more, which our board has chosen to classify as permitted use in 7 of our 11 zoning districts, requiring no public notice and no approval by the township before build-out of these types of facilities transpire. Voting no and holding off until this ordinance is refined and restricting solar farms to industrial districts temporarily, only in the meantime, is a common sense decision, with the land and people of West Deer protected until we can confidently say an excellent ordinance is ready to present. I ask that the proposed solar farm ordinance be rejected and revisited for improvement. Why vote to approve a document that is admittedly flawed? Then after hearing Gavin speak, I just have one more comment. Requiring a sound study for a solar farm is kind of ludicrous. I can't think of a more quiet operation, but we approve compressor stations on the other hand. Thank you.
I just want to pass these out for your reference. I'll let you just take one and pass it down. I'll hand on to Josh since he's all the way down the end. And I just want to say these comments aren't strictly something we've invented. These have been reviewed by 3 different organizations and also an attorney that we asked to review the comments and the ordinance. So the commentary I just handed you, which I'm not reading, is not something that's just our makeup. And again, Jack Dirk, 37 Corwood Lane. And I'm speaking tonight in support of the solar ordinance. However, I do have serious concerns about the current draft, both in substance and in process. As we know, at the Planning Commission meeting, they unanimously voted against recommending the ordinance. And this was due to several residents and planning commissioners raising thoughtful concerns, which are actually documented in that document, about the ordinance as it is written. And you have that information in hand. Let me be clear, I strongly support responsible local regulation, but this draft, as written, overreaches in ways that risk putting our township at odds with residents' rights, state-level energy goals, and PUC regulations. It potentially works against some of the values many of us can agree on, such as energy independence, private property rights, and having a resilient, secure energy grid. Unfortunately, this draft places unnecessary and uneven barriers in front of residents and property owners who simply want to make practical, lawful use of their property to generate local power. In many cases, these restrictions appear without clear justification or public benefit. For example, accessory solar for residents and businesses states it requires all energy created to be used on site. This is not how it works in Pennsylvania. We have net metering, which is regulated by the PUC, not the township. Accessory solar is limited to 50 kilowatts. Why? If a business or other establishment wants to put 100 kilowatts of solar panels on their roof, for instance, John has the athletic center, he could put 100 kilowatts of power on that roof and offset operating costs. Why does the township care in a way when something doesn't harm the public in any way? The requirement to post a financial security in the amount of 110% of decommissioning costs is not required for any other project and is an undue burden on development. It could be viewed as a de facto ban and set us up for a legal challenge. Concerns about temporary noise during construction are valid. However, no other temporary construction project in the township is subject to a special sound study, but we require it for solar. Singling out solar in this way sends the wrong message and invites questions about fairness. These are just a few examples of several concerns we have with the draft ordinance in the document that is handed to you. Another concern we have is transparency. I appreciate your comment. However, just going by what we were told in May that there was interest in a couple of parcels. Then the next day, we visited the township building to ask several questions about a couple of things, and the township manager stated that there was nothing specific, we were just being proactive. Then, at the Planning Commission workshop a few weeks later, we were told it was because of concerns in Buffalo Township. Now, maybe these were tied together, but finally, at the Planning Commission meeting, we were told they could put it in R2 and R3, and then a few sentences later, it's told it was only allowed in industrial. You have to understand from our standpoint, what are we expected to believe? Providing accurate, consistent information is essential for meaningful public comment and good policy. Residents and commissioners deserve the full picture, not just talking points that justify a predetermined outcome. Local solar, especially when paired with storage, is one of the few tools we have to strengthen our grid and reduce reliance on an aging infrastructure. We want to see a strong ordinance, one that encourages good design, protects the public interest, and aligns with Pennsylvania law. But rushing forward with a flawed draft won't accomplish that. It creates confusion, mistrust, and sets the township up for potential legal challenges. I urge this board not to pass this draft version tonight. Take the time to align it with the state's PUC and energy goals, honor private property rights, and promote solutions to make our community more self-resilient and secure. Let's regulate smartly, not excessively, and build a policy that reflects the best for our community. Thank you for your time and your service.
Anyone else?
Yeah, Mark Schmidt, 25 Joseph Street. Question for the solicitor. Is the township not already protected by the pending ordinance section?
Unfortunately, due to recent case law, we're not protected by the pending ordinance doctrine.
Okay. Is that something new?
Recent case law, yes.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Nicole Zeeland, Glasgow Road. I appreciate the board taking a proactive stance when it comes to protective zoning ordinances. West Deer residents could benefit from this type of urgency with all major development in our township. However, I believe it's important to follow the standard process of first proposing an ordinance, then sending it to the Planning Commission for review, then incorporating their feedback, then advertising for a hearing. If we had followed this procedure, you would be voting today on advertising a hearing to adopt an ordinance thoughtfully tailored to West Deer's needs with buy-in from our neighbors and local experts. In a conversation with Allegheny County, they also confirmed the ideal process is for the county to review the draft before it's advertised for a hearing, so that their comments can be incorporated as well. Instead, our county and commissioners received a template ordinance that has issues we can't resolve. Their recommendations are irrelevant since the draft can't be changed once the hearing's advertised. Some of these issues are as follows. Having an ordinance titled solar farm and including residential use restrictions that potentially infringe upon the rights of property owners. Requiring a 110% fee for decommissioning costs and a glare study that is, in my opinion, a bit overbearing. These demands could almost be interpreted as trying to discourage this type of development. I understand the board wants to get something on the books and make changes in the future. The last time we heard this argument of pass now, fix later was 10 months ago for oil and gas. No changes have been made or even considered, while development moves forward across our township. I don't trust or agree with this strategy. We deserve more consideration of policies that shape the future of West Deer. We deserve informed ordinances built through collaboration with our community stakeholders. Moving forward, we deserve fiscal responsibility in paying for one hearing for a good ordinance that the majority of our neighbors support. I'm asking you to vote no on this solar farm ordinance today. Please send it back to the Planning Commission and let's work together to get it right the first time. Thank you.
Rich Alba, 5036 Bakerstown, Comerville Road. Gavin, that question you were asked by Mr. Schmidt about recent case law, can you elaborate on that just a little bit?
It's kind of a complicated legal issue, but I will tell you in the Swatera Township case that came down, Swatera, the court has determined that uses that include a land development component are not protected by the pending ordinance doctrine. So in other words, if you would file a zoning application, but there was going to be a land development associated with the zoning, then then you cannot piggyback the pending ordinance doctrine to protect you from the land use application. So it's essentially, unfortunately for municipalities, significantly gutted the pending ordinance doctrine, which I'm happy to have a conversation with you and Mr. Schmidt offline further.
Okay, thank you.
Roth Stump, Middle Road. Another concern is process transparency. This is being rushed for no clear reason. We were told at the May meeting there was interest in a couple parcels in the township. The next day, we were informed in a conversation with the township manager that there was nothing specific. We are just being proactive, which, thinking back to Gavin's earlier comment, that seems to conflict because you were pretty confident that there was some things out there.
There is, yes.
Then at the last planning commission workshop, we were told it was because of concerns that Buffalo Township is dealing with. On Friday, July 26th, the planning commissioners were told they could put a solar in R2 and R3. Then a few sentences later, when questioned, it was stated it was only allowed in industrial as a conditional use. What are we to believe? Accurate, consistent information is essential for meaningful public engagement and good policy. Residents and commissioners deserve the full picture, not just talking points that justify a predetermined outcome. And just kind of going off script here. So I was reading the story. There's a building out in Philadelphia. It's a 50,000 square foot building, and they were proactive with the solar development on it. So they're actually going to be, they're looking to be 100% fully off the grid, like they don't rely on the traditional power. So the theory there is that whenever I hear that we're looking to develop like the commercial properties, the business properties, say like down on 910 and whatnot. Now there might not be pending, plans in the works, but theoretically, if we were to handicap those buildings from allowing them to put solar on rooftops, we are in a sense taking an edge away from those property owners to fill those properties, because you could actually propose that as a benefit to that property versus another township, because the tenant could theoretically receive a benefit from the solar power that's also controlled, as far as there was some environmental concerns as far as certain chemicals or different products being able to leach out of the solar, equipment. I would speculate that on a rooftop installation, you would have far more control of that. So to me, I don't see why it feels like we're shooting ourselves in the foot by trying to pass legislation that is clearly not ready to be moved forward. I mean, due diligence would be, pretty important. Thank you.
Anyone else?
David Harrison, Middle Road Extension. I just did a quick search in the last few days about all of the other surrounding townships that have passed these similar type of regulations. This is Buffalo Township. It looks very similar to what you guys are looking at. Maybe little changes here and there. But Muddy Creek, Penn Township, Cumberland County, it just seemed like this, and all of these seem to be signed in the last year or a few months. So they all seem to have had the same problem. So what the solicitor said earlier is, it sounds like without it we could only have it in I, but that's not the case, is it? It could be anywhere, right?
Potentially.
So having something in place, whether it's imperfect, is better than nothing at all. The other thing is we use solar power for our remote seismographs when we don't have access to power. I'm all for solar power, but we also charge alkaline batteries, marine batteries. We don't charge lithium-ion batteries, which can be dangerous. And I like the idea of the training for the fire company. So and the other thing is there's a lot of concern about the loss of farmland when you put a solar farm up. So I just want you to, maybe it's not perfect, but it's better than nothing. So that's all. Thank you.
Any other commenters before we close the hearing?
Are we to hold our comments until the meeting?
Yeah. All right, we'll close the public hearing and take a couple minutes to get ready, and we can jump right into the regular meeting. Thanks, everybody.
Like baseball. Oh, look at that lightning right there. No.
You made it in, Scott. Good evening, everyone. Is this?